First Contact's Folly. Supreme Commander Lyra Valeth of the Zephyrian Collective stood at the observation deck of the Starweaver, her flagship's crystalline surfaces reflecting the soft blue glow of Earth below. The planet's beauty was undeniable, but to her analytical mind, it represented something far more significant: the newest addition to their ever-expanding empire of protected worlds. Our preliminary scans confirmed their technological level, Commander reported First Observer Nexus, his holographic form shimmering beside her. They've barely achieved lunar colonization. Their most advanced propulsion systems are primitive fusion drives. They'll be grateful for our guidance. Lyra's iridescent scales shifted in a pattern that indicated satisfaction. The Zephyrian Collective had perfected the art of benevolent integration over millennia. Their approach was subtle, refined, and had never failed. They would demonstrate their overwhelming technological superiority, offer protection and advancement, and watch as another grateful species joined their empire. But first contact with humanity would shatter 10,000 years of Zephyrian certainty. The first sign that something was amiss came when their initial broadcast went unanswered. Instead of the expected panic or awe, Earth's major population centers simply continued their normal activities. Military installations went dark one by one, but not in a pattern of fear. It was coordinated, deliberate. Curious response. Nexus noted, his form flickering with uncertainty. The pattern doesn't match any of our previous encounters. Lyra dismissed his concerns. Proceed with the standard protocol. Target their orbital station, disable its power systems. Show them how easily we could destroy it if we wished. The Starweaver's primary beam lanced out toward the International Space Station. What should have been a simple display of power instead revealed humanity's first surprise. The beam scattered harmlessly against an electromagnetic shield that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's supposed technology level. Impossible, Lyra whispered, her scales now shifting to a pattern of alarm. Their technological level couldn't have advanced this quickly. We've been monitoring them for decades. The response came not from their expected diplomatic channels, but was broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. A calm, measured voice spoke. Greetings, Zephyrian Collective. We've been expecting you. Perhaps we should discuss your habit of underestimating lesser species. What followed was detailed knowledge of every Zephyrian protocol, every strategy they had used for integration, every weakness in their approach. Somehow, humanity had studied them long before they arrived. Commander, Nexus's voice carried an edge of urgency. We're detecting energy signatures from Earth's lunar surface. They're not in our database. Before Lyra could respond, a massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the moon's dark side, carefully calibrated to the exact frequency of Zephyrian shields. 3 support vessels lost power immediately, their crystalline structures darkening as they began to drift. How? Lyra demanded, watching in disbelief as Earth launched what appeared to be primitive chemical rockets toward their disabled ships. Their technology shouldn't allow for this. They didn't advance their technology, Commander, Nexus replied, his holographic form pulsing with realization. They adapted their existing technology specifically to counter ours. Every piece of our debris, every stray signal, every probe we sent, they studied them all. They were preparing for us long before we arrived. The chemical rockets split apart mid-flight, revealing sophisticated electromagnetic disruptors that bore hallmarks of reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology. Humanity hadn't waited for first contact to begin preparing their defenses. They had been quietly analyzing every piece of alien technology that had ever strayed into their system, building their understanding and waiting. As the Zephyrian fleet retreated in disarray, a final transmission reached them. Next time, try asking nicely. We're actually quite friendly when not threatened. Oh, and you might want to warn others. Humanity doesn't take kindly to attempted subjugation, diplomatic or otherwise. Safe travels. The Zephyrian Collective had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that a species' technological level determined their capability for resistance. They never considered that imagination, preparation, and sheer determination could bridge that gap. In the cycles that followed, the Earth encounter would become a cautionary tale taught to every Zephyrian diplomat. Never mistake technological inferiority for weakness, and never ever underestimate humanity's capacity to turn their perceived weaknesses into strengths. The Silent Watchers. In the depths of humanity's Unified Defense Command Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Isabella Torres watched the Zephyrian fleet's retreat with grim satisfaction. The massive holographic display showed their crystalline ships limping away, their once proud formation now scattered and broken. "Send the signal to all outposts," she commanded. Operation Silent Shield enters Phase 2. The truth about humanity's preparedness went far deeper than the Zephyrians could have imagined. 20 years earlier, when a young radio astronomer named Dr. Raj Patel had first detected their surveillance probes at the edge of the solar system, humanity had made a crucial decision. They would hide their true capabilities. Status report from Lunar Base Artemis, announced Captain Marcus Wong, his hands dancing over the quantum-encrypted console. All electromagnetic pulse cannons recharge. The mining operation facade remains intact. What the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive lunar mining operations were actually massive weapons platforms, disguised using technology reverse-engineered from their own stealth systems. Every mining accident had been a weapons test. Every failed space mission had deployed another layer of Earth's defensive network. "Admiral," Lieutenant Olivia Santos interrupted, her dark eyes fixed on the detection grid. "We're picking up quantum fluctuations. They're calling for reinforcements." Isabella smiled. They had expected this. The Zephyrians' pride wouldn't allow them to accept defeat so easily. Activate Project Oracle. In a secret facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Raj Patel stood before the quantum prediction engine he had built using principles gleaned from studying Zephyrian technology. The massive machine didn't just track their enemies' movements. It predicted them. "The algorithm confirms our projections," Raj reported via secure channel. "They'll return with their primary fleet within 72 hours. 300 ships minimum." Isabella turned to the assembled military leaders on the command deck. Representatives from every nation stood united, their previous conflicts forgotten in the face of a common threat. "Ladies and gentlemen, everything we've prepared for over the last 2 decades comes down to this. Initiate Protocol Prometheus." Across Earth and throughout the solar system, humanity's true defensive capabilities began to emerge from their carefully maintained disguise. Asteroid mining operations transformed into missile platforms. Weather satellites revealed themselves as energy weapon arrays. Commercial space stations became battle platforms. In high orbit, Commander Yuki Tanaka watched from the bridge of the TSS Artemis as her ship's metamaterial coating shifted, dropping the facade of a simple cargo vessel. Similar transformations were happening across Earth's merchant fleet. What the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive chemical rockets were actually advanced warships, hiding in plain sight. "All ships reporting ready." "Admiral," Yuki transmitted. "The Artemis battle group stands prepared." The heart of humanity's deception lay in understanding their enemy's psychology. The Zephyrians, like many advanced civilizations, suffered from their own success. They had become so accustomed to their technological superiority that they had lost the ability to innovate, to think creatively. In the quantum lab, Raj monitored the incoming data streams. "Admiral, we're detecting the first wave of their reinforcements. Quantum signatures match our predictions exactly." Isabella nodded. "They're so predictable. Send the signal to all commands. Operation Trojan Horse is now active." What the Zephyrians were about to discover was that humanity hadn't just prepared defenses. They had seeded their enemy's empire with sleeper agents. For years, primitive human trading vessels had visited Zephyrian protectorate worlds, establishing connections, sharing ideas about independence, and quietly distributing technology that could pierce Zephyrian control systems. "Message from the resistance cells on 3 Zephyrian protectorate worlds," Marcus reported. "They're ready to rise up on our signal." The Admiral allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity had learned early on that they couldn't match the Zephyrians ship for ship, weapon for weapon. Instead, they had turned their greatest weakness, their apparent technological inferiority, into their greatest strength. Every dismissive assessment by the Zephyrians had only served to mask humanity's true preparations. Signal from the quantum prediction engine, Olivia announced. The main Zephyrian fleet has begun its approach. 320 ships, just as predicted. Isabella stood before the command center's main display, her voice carrying to every defender of Earth. For 20 years, we've prepared for this moment. We've hidden our strength, learned their weaknesses, and planted the seeds of their defeat throughout their own empire. They thought us primitive, and in doing so, they handed us the perfect disguise. The massive display showed the approaching Zephyrian armada, their crystalline ships gleaming with power and arrogance. They had no idea they were flying into a trap 2 decades in the making. All commands, Isabella's voice was steel. Execute Protocol Prometheus. Let's show the galaxy why you should never underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation. Across the solar system, humanity's forces shed their disguises. The real battle for Earth's independence was about to begin, and the Zephyrians were about to learn that appearances could be deceiving. Humanity's gambit. The Zephyrian battle fleet emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, their crystalline vessels forming a geometric pattern that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. High Admiral Thexel stood on the command deck of the Stellar Dominance, his bioluminescent patterns glowing with anticipation. Deploy the subjugation grid, he commanded. Show these primitives the full might of the collective. In Earth's Defense Command, Admiral Torres watched the enemy fleet's arrival through multiple sensor feeds. Status of Operation Prometheus. All systems green, Captain Wong reported. Quantum entanglement network at full capacity. Dr. Patel's predictions are holding true to within 0.03% variance. The Zephyrians had deployed their standard battle formation, exactly as humanity's quantum predictions had suggested they would. Their rigid adherence to proven tactics was about to become their greatest weakness. Signal from Commander Tanaka. Lieutenant Santos announced. The Artemis battle group is in position. Solar wind interference is masking their approach, just as planned. Isabella allowed herself a small smile. Begin Phase 1. Let's show them our primitive response. Across the solar system, hundreds of seemingly innocuous satellites and debris fields suddenly activated. What appeared to be space junk was actually a vast network of quantum-linked devices, each one designed to exploit a specific weakness in Zephyrian technology. Quantum disruption field activated, Dr. Patel reported from his laboratory. Their communication grid should be fragmenting. Now, on the bridge of the Stellar Dominance, Thexel watched in growing confusion as his fleet's quantum communication network began to fail. Impossible. These primitives couldn't possibly understand quantum entanglement technology, let alone disrupt it. But humanity hadn't needed to fully understand Zephyrian quantum technology to disrupt it. They had discovered that creating specific patterns of quantum noise could effectively jam their communications. It was like throwing sand into a precision machine. You didn't need to understand how the machine worked to stop it. Launch the primary attack wave, Thexel commanded, falling back on standard protocol. Without their quantum network, they would rely on conventional tactics. That was exactly what humanity had been waiting for. They're launching their first wave, Isabella announced. Execute Operation Solar Storm. Commander Tanaka's voice came through the quantum-secured channel. Artemis Battle Group, weapons free. Show them what humanity's been hiding. The Zephyrian attack force suddenly found itself caught in a crossfire. The supposedly primitive human ships revealed their true nature, their metamaterial hulls shifting to expose advanced weapon systems. But the real surprise came from the sun itself. Solar collectors at full capacity, Marcus reported, initiating coronal mass redirection. What the Zephyrians had dismissed as simple solar observation platforms were actually massive energy collectors. Humanity had learned to harness and direct solar flares with precise control. A massive wave of plasma, guided by electromagnetic fields, swept through the Zephyrian fleet. Their shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to naturally occurring plasma when properly directed. Dozens of ships went dark, their crystalline structures disrupted by the intense solar radiation. Impossible. Thexol raged as reports of failures cascaded through his command deck. They're using the star itself as a weapon. But the solar attack was just the beginning. From the dark side of Mars, hundreds of small objects launched toward the Zephyrian fleet. They appeared to be simple kinetic weapons, barely worth noting. "Admiral," Olivia called out, "the Trojan devices are away. Impact in 3 minutes." These weren't simple projectiles. Each one contained a quantum-entangled core, designed to resonate with the crystalline structure of Zephyrian ships. As they impacted against the enemy shields, they created microscopic quantum tunnels, just large enough to allow their real payload through. By the first light, Thexol whispered as his sensors registered thousands of quantum breaches across the fleet. They'd weaponized quantum entanglement itself. The devices released swarms of nanoscale machines, reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian technology. These microscopic saboteurs began disrupting the crystal matrices that powered their ships, turning their own technology against them. In the quantum lab, Raj watched his predictions unfold with mathematical precision. "Admiral, quantum cascade effect initiating. Their fleet's crystal matrices are beginning to destabilize." Isabella nodded grimly. "Signal all forces. Execute final phase. Commander Tanaka, you have weapons free." The Artemis battle group emerged from their solar wind cover, their true forms finally revealed. These ships represented the pinnacle of human military technology, combining reverse-engineered Zephyrian systems with humanity's own innovations. "This is Commander Tanaka to all ships." Yuki's voice rang clear across the battle network. "Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. Human ships, smaller but far more maneuverable than their crystalline counterparts, danced through the Zephyrian formation. They struck with precise attacks, targeting the weaknesses that humanity had spent years studying. From the stellar dominance, Thexol watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. These humans hadn't just prepared for this battle. They had revolutionized warfare itself, turning their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. "Admiral," Olivia reported, "we're detecting quantum surge signatures. Their remaining ships are preparing for emergency translation." Isabella straightened her uniform. "Let them run. Send one final message to High Admiral Thexol." The message was simple. "Consider this humanity's application for independence. We trust there will be no need for further demonstrations." Ripples across the stars. The Grand Council chamber of the Zephyrian Collective had never seen such chaos. The crystalline walls reflected the agitated bioluminescence of hundreds of council members, their patterns shifting in waves of disbelief and anger. High Counselor Venice stood at the center, her form pulsing with barely contained fury as she reviewed the battle records. 3 centuries of military doctrine, rendered obsolete in a single engagement, she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "Our most advanced fleet, defeated by a species that hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel." But the military defeat was only the beginning of their problems. Reports were flooding in from across their protectorate worlds. The quantum communication network that had maintained their control was failing, system by system. Somehow, humanity had distributed their quantum disruption technology throughout the Empire. "High Counselor," First Speaker Jaxol interrupted, his patterns showing urgent concern. "We're receiving transmissions from multiple protectorate worlds. They're demanding independence negotiations." In Earth's Defense Command Center, Admiral Torres reviewed the incoming data with Dr. Patel and her senior staff. The quantum prediction engine had already anticipated this phase of their strategy, but the speed of the response exceeded even their optimistic projections. 17 protectorate worlds have activated the quantum disruptors we provided, Marcus reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. The Zephyrian control network is collapsing faster than expected. Isabella nodded. Who would have thought our greatest export would be revolution? Commander Tanaka, status of the monitoring network. Yuki's hologram appeared in the command center, her expression satisfied. The stealth platforms are all in position. We're tracking every Zephyrian movement across 3 sectors. They haven't detected a single one. The truth about humanity's technological achievements was far more impressive than even the Zephyrians had realized during the battle. While they had focused on Earth's defensive capabilities, they had missed the true extent of human innovation. Dr. Patel stepped forward, gesturing to a complex quantum diagram. The quantum prediction engine isn't just a defensive tool. It's allowed us to map the entire Zephyrian quantum network. Every transmission, every command signal, every fleet movement. We can track it all. And more importantly, Olivia added, we can share that information with their protectorate worlds. Knowledge really is power. In the Zephyrian Council chamber, the situation was growing more dire by the moment. Reports of uprising and rebellion poured in from across their empire. Centuries of careful control were unraveling in days. How? Vena demanded. How did they do this? Our technology was superior in every way. First Observer Nexus, summoned to explain the disaster, stepped forward. His holographic form flickered with embarrassment. High Counselor, we've discovered something disturbing. The humans didn't just defeat our military. They've been systematically dismantling our empire for years. The evidence was undeniable. Those primitive human trading ships that had visited their protectorate worlds. They had been conducting detailed surveillance, making connections with local resistance movements, and spreading ideas about independence. Every piece of primitive human technology traded to their subjects had contained hidden quantum disruptors designed to activate simultaneously. They turned our greatest strength into our greatest vulnerability. Nexus explained, our quantum network allowed us to control our empire efficiently, but once they learned to disrupt it, they didn't just prepare for invasion, Vena realized, her bioluminescence dimming with shock. They planned for revolution. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders gathered to discuss the next phase. The quantum prediction engine had shown them multiple possible futures, and they had prepared for each one. The Zephyrians have 3 choices, Isabella explained to the assembled representatives. They can attempt another military action, which would fail even more spectacularly than the first. They can try to reassert control over their empire, which is already impossible thanks to our distributed quantum disruption network. Or they can negotiate, Dr. Patel finished, not just with us, but with all their former subjects. The quantum displays showed the spreading wave of rebellion across Zephyrian space. Each protectorate world that activated their quantum disruptors gained not just independence, but access to the tools and knowledge to maintain it. We didn't just defeat their fleet, Yuki observed through her hologram. We've changed the entire balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. Lieutenant Santos monitored the quantum channels, watching the diplomatic chaos unfold. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian High Council. They're requesting a meeting to discuss terms. Admiral Torres allowed herself a small smile. Tell them we'll be happy to host the negotiations, and inform them that representatives from all their former protectorate worlds will be attending as well. It's time for a new order in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had thought they were dealing with a primitive species seeking merely to defend itself. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that had spent years preparing not just for victory, but for the complete transformation of galactic society. Their mistake hadn't just cost them a battle, it had cost them their empire. Dawn of a new era. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the new Galactic Concordat held its first official assembly in a location that would have seemed impossible just months before, Earth's orbital diplomatic station. Representatives from 23 formerly subjugated species sat alongside human delegates, while the Zephyrian representatives, now equals rather than rulers, watched the proceedings with carefully neutral luminescence patterns. Admiral Isabella Torres stood at the observation deck, watching ships from dozens of worlds dock at the station. Each vessel represented a civilization that had gained its independence in the wake of humanity's victory. But more importantly, each represented a partner in a new kind of interstellar community. Quite a view, isn't it? Dr. Raj Patel joined her at the window, his quantum tablet displaying real-time data from the reformed Galactic communication network. The quantum prediction engine gives us a 97.8% probability of lasting peace under the new accords. And the other 2.2%? Isabella asked, though she already knew the answer. Raj smiled. Shows even better outcomes. Turns out freedom is quite popular across species boundaries. The revolution that had begun with Earth's defense had evolved into something far more profound. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Zephyrians. They had demonstrated a new way for civilizations to interact, one based on cooperation and mutual respect, rather than dominance and control. In the main assembly chamber, Commander Yuki Tanaka, now Earth's military liaison to the Concordat, addressed the gathered representatives. The defensive technologies we developed aren't just weapons. They're tools for maintaining independence. By sharing them equally among all member worlds, we ensure that no single power can ever dominate the others again. The Zephyrian delegate, first speaker Jack Soul, rose to speak next. His bioluminescent patterns showed a mix of humility and determination. My people have learned a costly but valuable lesson. True strength lies not in technological superiority, but in innovation, adaptation, and cooperation. We ask not to be forgiven for our past, but to be given the chance to build a better future together. In the years since the battle, the galaxy had changed dramatically. The quantum disruption network that had dismantled the Zephyrian Empire had been repurposed into a democratic communication system, allowing all species to share knowledge and culture freely. Former protectorate worlds had developed their own unique combinations of technology, blending their traditional methods with innovations shared by Earth and others. Admiral, Lieutenant Olivia Santos approached with a quantum tablet. We're receiving the final signatures on the Concordat Charter. All 24 member species have ratified it, including the Zephyrians. The Charter represented everything humanity had hoped to achieve. It established protocols for peaceful first contact with new civilizations, guaranteed the right of technological self-determination for all species, and created a framework for sharing innovations without forcing cultural assimilation. Captain Marcus Wong, now heading Earth's diplomatic security, joined them with his own report. The last of the old Zephyrian control networks has been dismantled. The quantum freedom protocols are now fully operational across all member worlds. In the assembly chamber, the final ceremony began. Representatives from each world stepped forward to activate their quantum interface nodes, linking their civilizations in a new network based on equality rather than control. The crystalline walls, repurposed from a Zephyrian vessel, reflected the combined bioluminescence of dozens of species in a stunning display of unity. Who would have thought, Isabella mused, watching the ceremony, that our greatest contribution to galactic civilization would be teaching everyone the value of underestimation. Dr. Patel laughed softly. Not just underestimation, imagination. We showed them that true advancement comes not from technological superiority, but from the creativity to use what you have in ways no one expects. The quantum prediction engine had shown them this possibility, but achieving it had required the combined efforts of humanity and all their new allies. They had built something unprecedented, a galactic community where strength was measured not by dominance, but by innovation and cooperation. As the ceremony concluded, first speaker Jack Soul approached Admiral Torres with a final observation. You know, Admiral, my people spent millennia believing we were uplifting lesser species. In the end, it was humanity who uplifted us all, not through force or technology, but by showing us a better way. Isabella smiled as she watched ships from 24 worlds moving peacefully through space around Earth's orbital station. Sometimes the best way to teach is by example. We didn't just want to win a war. We wanted to change the rules of the game entirely. The quantum displays showed the spreading network of cooperation and innovation across the galaxy. Former enemies were now partners, sharing discoveries and building something greater than any empire. Humanity had done more than defend their independence. They had sparked a revolution in how civilizations interacted. The quantum prediction engine shows countless possible futures now, Raj noted, studying his readings. And in every one of them, the galaxy is better for what happened here. As the first session of the new Galactic Concordat came to a close, the message was clear. The era of empire was over. A new age of innovation, cooperation, and mutual respect had begun. And it had all started because one species had been clever enough to turn underestimation into their greatest weapon. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter that day, as if celebrating the dawn of a new era in galactic history, one where the true measure of a civilization lay not in its technology, but in its capacity for innovation, adaptation, and cooperation. Humanity had not just survived its trial by fire. It had transformed the very nature of galactic society itself.